Hello everyone, good evening, welcome and thanks for joining to our first virtual event in 2020. My name is Zahra. I am Orange County team lead on behalf of Women of MENA in Technology. We, like the other organization, we had to postpone our in-person event sometimes in future, hopefully near future, but we are so glad that we could make this virtual event happen. Before to the fireside chat, I would like to share some news from our organization. We turned to 5 years old in March. Thank you so much for being such an amazing community member. As you know, our mission is closing diversity and gender gap, and we could make impact in 17 cities globally, and we have over 20,000 members around the globe. Also, I would like to share with you that we rebranded to Women of MENA in Technology as of April 1st. Means our organization have more capabilities to offer to the communities. Persian Women in Tech is a sub-program. We have different programs. We have membership program. We have mentorship program. You can find more information about our program on our website. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact us and send us an email. So that's all from our organization. Tonight we have a fireside chat with the topic of how to take your idea to launch a startup. Very interesting topic. I'm so excited for that. And also we're going to have a Q&A session after that. So if you have any question related to the topic that would like to a speaker answer, please send your question on the Q&A button. So there is a chat and there is a Q&A window. Please make sure to send your question over there that our moderator can see your question, and they will answer it as much as basically the time allow them. So I'm so excited for that. We have two amazing speakers, Maryam Rofougaran. She is co-founder, CEO, and board member of Movandi Corporation, and Ali Khosh, entrepreneur, investor, and VP of emerging technology at Quandary Peak Research. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation and being here. Please join me to the panel. Hi,
guys. How are you?
Thank you.
Hello.
For here. Hi, Maryam. All right, I hand it to you.
Awesome.
I'm trying to bring up my video. For some reason, it's not coming up, but thank you.
If you're using your laptop, Maryam, there's a start video button on the lower left side of the screen, right next to the mute button.
Right, but when I click on it, it does not, it says, okay. Yeah, it's not doing it. Is it okay if I restart again? Because I think if I restart, it'll be fixed. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay, sorry about that. Let me do that.
No worries.
It's a virtual event, so it happens. A lot of technical issue.
You know, the good news about these virtual events is that I'm looking at the participants, and we have folks joining from pretty much all over the world. I saw someone joined from Europe, I think a few folks from Canada, and all over the US. So yeah, there is some good thing about these virtual ones, I guess.
Yeah, I love it too. Let's see if Maryam can.
I think she's trying to reconnect.
For some reason, this is my video. Oh, you see me now?
There we go. Yeah.
Sorry about that. I don't know what's happening. Okay.
No
it
worries.
happens.
Okay. How are you doing, Maryam?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Doing great. Can you hear me okay, and do you see me as well?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yep, all good.
Okay.
Perfect. Shall we get started?
Yeah, let's go.
Awesome. Very good. So hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I'm super excited talking to Maryam tonight. There's a lot of stuff to cover, so hopefully we can go through most of the questions that I was preparing to ask Maryam. You know, when Maryam and I were discussing today's chat, she graciously agreed to keep this a little more entertaining and informative by staying away from, you know, canned questions or cliche responses. So hopefully you guys will find this a useful discussion. Let's start with a little bit of background, Maryam. You know, behind every successful venture, there's usually a driven leader with an incredible life story. What's your life story?
Okay, so I don't know, incredible or not, but I think, you know, everybody has a story, and you know, you are depending on the situation you're in, and you know what things you face going forward. You can, that kind of defines and enable you to be entrepreneur or not entrepreneur. But I basically come from a family that cared a lot about education. So to my parents, it was very important that we get educated. And I was born and raised in Iran, in Isfahan. I finished my high school in Isfahan, actually, and then that's exactly right after my high school, I came to the US. And so back then, you know, as far as I remember, I always, I really enjoyed solving problems in math, physics. You know, if I really like to understand what's behind, you know, things that are happening in nature, and real, you know, kind of understand what the law of physics are behind that, etc. So because of that, when my parents basically sent my brother after high school to the United States, who was, you know, he actually is 5 years older than me. I just kept telling him that, you know, I want to go, I want to pursue my education too, and I want to be able to go there and become a scientist. And luckily my parents were open-minded enough, and you know, my mom was one of those people that believed and taught us that you know, there's nothing that you can't do, and don't let feeling that, you know, if someone tells you if you're a woman or you're a girl cannot do this or do that, and as long as you're basically staying within the limits of, you know, guidelines, anything that anyone can do, you should be able to do. So they basically agreed to send me to the United States. I came to the United States. I went to the UCLA lab where my brother was actually doing research in electrical engineering, and then realized that you know, whatever I loved in math and physics, they had applications in engineering, and you know, that I thought that would be a good path, because you know, obviously there would be more career opportunity and more jobs than trying to go to math or physics kind of major. And that's how basically I started. I went to UCLA. While I was doing my studying, I did research, and the research that we worked on, you know, at UCLA, it was initially for my master's, and then I started my PhD, continued doing the same thing. That was something that later on basically helped me with going into entrepreneurship and continuing my career path. But certainly I would say, you know, naturally I was always competitive, and I hated when someone told me you can't do this. So if anyone basically told me you can't do this, it made me even more motivated to basically go and try to do it. So
that's a perfect trait for catching the entrepreneurship disease, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. I think, you know, it's important to be kind of dedicated and work hard. I mean, work hard at the same time having the motivation to continue with what you like to do.
Sure. Tell us a little bit more about Movandi and how the idea for it came about.
So Movandi is basically, we started Movandi as a natural extension to what we were doing in the past couple of decades, right? I mean, we started a company first, which it was right after we came out of school, and that was in wireless. And at Broadcom, we continued doing that. So in that company, basically, we did Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, and then we came to Broadcom and worked on wireless. So we've been in wireless business for a long time, and we've developed many different products in different standards, and basically wireless means getting rid of wires, and that's something that everyone wants to do. I mean, if I could get rid of any kind of wire in my house today, I would do it at the moment, at an instant. So the need for it is there. We have done a lot of stuff that have been, really advanced in technology for the time of when we developed them, but again, that's nowhere close to what wireless is able or should be able to do, which would be able to get, very, very quick, instant kind of gigabit wireless, so that it's, it's not even noticeable. You should be able to have access to data so quickly that you can actually get those data and do a lot of, whether you have to do AI on it, do processing quickly, and be able to use that to make decisions, whether it's for applications like autonomous car, hospital, room surgery. I mean, you hear all these kind of things, but all this great application only happens if you have a wireless solution that can basically be almost zero latency and gigabits of wireless. So, so having been in this industry and knowing, the long-term vision of what you need to be, we came out of Broadcom in 2016 after being there for almost 16 years, and started Movandi with the vision of basically making this happen. Now, in order to be able to do this, there are a lot of challenges, right? And the main challenge is that you really have to move to very, very high frequency millimeter wave, where you have a lot of bandwidth and you don't have to worry about, going to really high kind of modulations to be able to get gigabits kind of throughput. And that makes it challenging, because then when you go to millimeter wave, it's very hard to basically get the signal inside the building or go. So penetration becomes an issue, coverage becomes an issue, which are real challenges. And that's where basically Movandi comes to solve these challenges and these issues. So our focus is basically trying to enable millimeter wave and enable this 5G and next generation of cellular and wireless.
Very cool, very cool. So let's go back in time a little bit to when you decided to start this venture, Movandi. Was there a moment in time where you went from being an employee, being a scientist, a manager, student, whatever the case is, to becoming an entrepreneur, or in your case, was it more of like an evolution?
I would say more like an evolution. It's not like a moment thing. I think, especially as I mentioned, we had at first a startup, and then became a big company because we sold our company to a bigger company called Broadcom, and then we started another company. But throughout this whole time, as I mentioned, we actually did something at UCLA, which was, what we did. We realized how that could be applied to the industry because of the need and shortage of wireless communication. We kind of, as a student, we started doing some sort of work with some startups as contractors, consultants, as well as big companies. And while doing that, we realized, and the timing was 2000, where, everybody was thinking about starting companies. So while doing that and being involved with the startups as well as the companies, we kind of got actually into the path of, okay, why not do our own thing? We do the know-how, this is the right timing, and then we go and start the company, and that's what we did. And even after that, when we sold the company to Broadcom, within Broadcom, we kept that going in a way because Broadcom had no wireless, right? So we kept it going in a way that we can imagine, like being a startup in a big company and try to do more and build a team and bring new technologies until we got to a point where. So during Broadcom, again, it was sort of entrepreneurship, but in a more kind of structured way, where I think I actually gained the experience of being a manager of big team, and everything that you learn from a big company, and shipping a lot of products, managing products and people, etc. But at the same time, being able to continue and do the entrepreneurship, bring more kind of technologies in. But after the acquisition of Broadcom by Avago, everything got solved because the company then basically the culture completely changed, and it became more like financially driven and being a company that goes and try to do more technology. And then, it became really, really hard to basically do what you want to do and continue with your vision. So that's when we came out and started the company. So that's why I'm saying it's kind of evolution, but at the same time, at different points of time, realize, okay, this is it. I can't do this anymore. And then you go on, start something else. Yeah.
Great. So, I assume a lot of folks who are listening to us are contemplating starting a new venture, or maybe they are, deep into their entrepreneurial journey. What makes this an interesting discussion, I think, is that you've gone through the whole cycle of from inception of an idea all the way to the exit, and then doing it all over again with Movandi. I think it would be interesting for folks to know what made you decide to share your entrepreneurial journey with our attendees here.
Okay, so I mean, it's always good to be able to share your experiences with, especially with, the younger people that are actually getting into the field, but especially women. And I'm saying that because in the field I am, especially electrical engineering. I mean, again, within engineering there are different kind of categories, but in electrical engineering specifically, the number and percentage of women is extremely low. There are some other fields like computer science may have some more, but still there is a big gap. Bioengineering has more, but generally speaking, I think one of the reasons that I actually I wanted to do this and come on this program is because I care, I really care, and I want to, and I have a daughter myself too. So I believe one of the reasons that there's not too many women in this field is number one is that they don't even get exposed to what engineering is, and even if they have the talent and they're smart, they don't get to see it, they don't experience it, so they don't even know anything about it to want to continue and go into engineering. Secondly, even the students or women who want to go into this field, sometimes they get intimidated and they don't feel like this is the right culture, especially when they go to work, and partially they feel like it's they're not treated fairly, they don't get enough support, which again, what we're trying to do, not just me, and I'm actually part of the GSA, which is the global semiconductor. We have formed this women in engineering kind of a committee that we're trying to promote more women in engineering. So I think when you talk to these young women, you realize that there is this feeling that they're not getting enough support. They feel like they get stuck, so they basically give up, or they're never going to get anywhere. So showing to them that there are cases where actually people have been able to make their way to top, And it's not that it's impossible. And luckily now there is a lot more support for it. I think companies are actually trying to hire more women and trying to make it more, make it easier for them to stay in this field. It's very encouraging, and I really want to, me and the whole committee and everyone likes to see that more, because I can tell you, and I see it, having diversity, no matter in what field, it's a big plus, because it brings all kind of new ideas and innovation. And women have some characteristics, men have some characteristics. If you combine all this together, it actually it helps the company a lot. So that's why one of the reasons I actually am here.
Absolutely, very grateful for you having decided to share this with us and all the attendees. Let's switch gears a little bit. As I promised a little bit earlier, I want to keep this practical so that people can leave this with some helpful takeaways. And let's talk a little bit about the mechanics of entrepreneurship. I'm sure Movandi or even Innovent Systems, your earlier venture, were not your first ideas. How did you decide to pursue these ones instead of all the other things that came to your mind? And how did you get the validation you needed to decide that this is the one I want to, this is the venture that I want to start right now?
Well, I mean, some of the things, again, partially, for example, the very first company we did was, we actually were doing some stuff and we built some know-how. But what happened was that you actually look around you, right, and see what's missing, right? When you're especially and it could be anything. I mean, for me, it was that specific technology we developed, but this doesn't have to be technology, right? It could be, I mean, as people are observant. I mean, if you are observant enough to basically whatever you do, to be looking around and noticing what's really missing and what makes a big difference. If you actually have, so it could be your own experience of, for example, I don't know, just going and trying to, this baby kind of, there are so many different kind of ideas that you go and you realize that there's something that you can find for your baby, whether it's a package for a gift. I mean, so many different ideas. It doesn't have to be necessarily advanced technology, but as long as you see, you're observant and you see there's a need in around you, that if you have a solution for it, then you can actually go market it and sell it. That basically is what it's all about. For us, is what the first one was basically saying that you do have cellular, right? But there's really no short range kind of wireless that's very low cost, and my phone with your phone can connect together, or with your laptop, and that's what Bluetooth. I mean, when we talked about it, Bluetooth was not there. It was just our own idea. It's just short range, right? And then standard started coming up. The next one, for example, the 5G, again, it was just because we were in this industry. So in my own field, I've been always looking and trying to vision, okay, what is the next thing, or what is it that's missing, which is missing, but at the same time, the market is kind of ready for it, right? I mean, if you think too far, it's something that is completely not doable. It has to be feasible, but at the same time, something that you can you have it out there. There would be many applications for it, and you would be able to sell it.
Great. So, sorry, go ahead, finish your thought.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing. You should be able to notice what is out there that you basically can address and sell it.
Great. So let's move forward with that journey. You're very observant. You've identified a pain point. You think you have a solution that's not too early or too late. And there's an aha moment. You say, I got this. There's something I can actually do here. Walk us through what would the first day, the first week, the first month of starting Movandi would look like, or, a typical venture that you start. I think it would be interesting for folks to hear your thoughts on that evolution of, how do you go from not being an entrepreneur to now suddenly you are an entrepreneur. You've created this idea and you gave birth to this idea. Walk us through how the first week or month would look like.
I mean, the very, very first thing after you actually have come to the conclusion that this is the path you want to take is making sure you have the right, at least right few people, right? That, I mean, assuming this is something that needs more than just you. It's not just an idea, you go build something and start selling on the internet. But if you're forming a company, you basically have to, right in the beginning, you have to be thinking about who are the few people that you want to bring and recruit and make sure that you have the right team. And at the same time, then you have to start thinking about, okay, now how am I going to get the funding to basically set up this company? So to do that, I mean, there are different ways of doing it. Again, usually what people do initially is try to get some seed money, and if that's doable to get it from friends and people, angel investors, that's always a good idea, because that gives you basically go and try to convince them, then put a little money, I try to do a prototype and build something that then I take it to big investors and get more money from it, rather than just going with nothing, just an idea on a PowerPoint to VCs where they would love to use that, and no matter how great of an idea is, but just because you don't have anything to show for it, if you don't have a team that you can say, okay, I do have a team. If you don't have something that shows, okay, I have built something, and this is the prototype, and even though it's not complete, it still requires a lot of work to make it a product. So that brings your value higher. So you don't give up a whole lot of company to be able to, to be able to set your company up. But I mean, the very first month is basically thinking about the team, bringing them together, get their commitments, try to get some seed money, and start the work, and then at the same time start talking to the venture capitals and make sure that you can bring your valuation higher, and then get basically more funding as you go along. But then again, you have to be able to articulate and show why you're doing this. Whether you're talking to angels or to whoever you're trying to raise money from, you really have to be able to articulate why this is needed and why I can sell it. It's not just a pure technology or something that I'm doing, and at the end I don't know if it's going to sell or not. So that's the very first month.
Perfect. So before I actually ask you the next question, just wanted to mention the fact that we're getting some really good questions on the Q&A. I'll try to limit my questions to make sure we have enough time to go through the attendees questions. So keep them coming, guys. I'm monitoring them, and I try to get to as many of them as possible with Maryam before our time is over. So going back to this topic of the first few weeks and few months and whatnot, and you already touched upon that. So if there's not much more to talk about, feel free to let me know. But I think one of the biggest pain points or dilemmas or challenges that entrepreneurs, at least first-time entrepreneurs, deal with is this sort of inherent catch-22 problem, which is, you cannot convince an A-star team to come and join you, or you can't get investors to back your idea with no product. And you can't build a damn product with no team or financial resources. And I think vast majority of first-time entrepreneurs deal with this dilemma, not knowing exactly how to break this vicious cycle. So you already touched upon some of this, but I'm curious to know if you have some additional thoughts to share with our audience regarding either your personal experience. I mean, you had a lot of intellectual property assets that maybe helped break this cycle a little bit, but if there are some general guidelines that you think would be helpful for attendees to keep in mind I keep saying attorneys because I work with a lot of attorneys. My apologies. If you have general ideas or guidances that you think would be helpful to our attendees to hear in how they can break that cycle, I think that would be very helpful to hear.
Yeah, I mean, again, for us, especially for second company was, a lot, well, I would say a lot easier than first round, just because, we already had proved ourselves, and, we had built a lot of products, shipped a lot of products, our names, everything. But, again, keep in mind that Movandi is still considered a semiconductor hardware company, which is nowhere like, all these apps and software companies that, you go and you build some, you just put a team together, you deliver something and the valuations go high rocket. Even with our name and what we had, and the fact that what we're trying to do is a completely new technology, which doesn't exist today. So we kind of have to actually help customers, like, operators, to build the ecosystem and bring this whole new thing, which everyone thinks it's impossible to market. So put that all together, it's not something that we could easily go and get money right away from it. I mean, a lot of VCs are just, all they look at is how much money they're going to make, right? It's not, a lot of them don't care really about the technology, unfortunately. So we did face that as well. It's not that, but then again, it helped because we had the credibility. So we actually had friends who basically wanted to bring the money. So we already had, who believed in us and wanted to put money, and then VCs came in. But our first kind of company was that timing was actually just the opposite. That timing was perfect for semiconductor, and everything was like, so the timing, everyone wanted to put money, but again, we were young and didn't have that name or credibility. So it was a kind of different era and different kind of challenges. But I think, it is true. I mean, if you haven't done anything in the past, you want to start, nobody knows you, it's going to be a lot harder. There's no question about it. But then again, I mean, if you have a great idea, you should be able to at least convince a few friends. And when I say a team, it doesn't have to be a huge team, right? And it should be at least a few of you who believe this idea is great, you can make something. So you can't do it all alone. You really need to bring a few of you together, make a few founders, show that you have a team, and that should not be impossible, right? Again, if you have a good idea, you should be, you have co-workers, you have people that are working with you. So a few of them should be able to basically be convinced this is good and they want to form a company with you. So you all go and make a team and then go together, put a plan together and start talking to, so as far as the team goes, right? Again, yeah, if you're just one person and you have something, but that should be able, that should be addressable. Then going to try to get money, as I said, again, going right to the VCs may be hard, and a lot of them will turn you down because they don't know you. The best way is that there are so many, again, I think there are so many angels, and there are other kind of individuals who are looking for good ideas. So if you're able to find them, whether I'm not actually, I haven't done this, but I see this, and there are some website that you go and try to raise money, etc. from. So I think, again, good idea and your personality and being able to sell your idea together can basically make a big difference. If you have an idea and you guys just go and try to sell on the technical base and you can't basically convince them there's a market for it, and how much market you can capture, how much you generate revenue, it's going to be very hard to get any attraction from, whether it's from angels or from VCs. But if you have a good story, I think it's going to make it a lot easier.
Sure. And just to quickly riff on that note, I think with the rise of a lot of these crowdfunding platforms that you alluded to, rise of angel money, you know, a few other mega trends like remote work or gig economy or co-working spaces and whatnot, some of this has been democratized. There's a slightly lower barrier to entry these days. From my own experience, you know, getting an iPhone app developed would have cost you $200,000-300,000, and now you could get someone at Upwork to do it at a fraction of that cost. So there's a lot of platforms that actually help you break that cycle as well a little bit.
And you know, one other thing to mention, I think especially for women, there are some sort of, there are actually more VCs that are purely or mainly looking at female founders, and
100%.
so there's more, yeah. And so I think it, you know, if you're a female and you're trying to start a company, you should definitely try to find out which VCs they are. Again, I don't have all those data, but I'm sure you can find them on the internet.
Right. So it's interesting. My next question really nicely aligns with one of the questions posted to the Q&A. So I'll read both of them to you, and hopefully you could address them both at the same time. My question to you was, you know, do you see whether or not you see something unique about someone like yourself, a minority female entrepreneur, going about launching a venture versus someone whose profile is more typical of the entrepreneurs we see every day? And then Scott Johnson posted on the Q&A something quite related. I'll just read you the question. Scott says, when it comes to funding your startup, women-led businesses only receive 6% of total VC funding over the past 10 years. And why do you think this is, this being the gender discrimination or the risk aversion, etc.? And what steps can women entrepreneurs take to overcome these obstacles? Kind of a loaded question, but I think you're the perfect person to ask this question.
Right. So again, generally raising money, it's not, you know, I wouldn't say it's easy, but if you're a woman, I don't think there is anything different that you should be doing. I mean, again, if you do have a good idea, if you already have a plan, you're able to sell your idea, you should be able to get support. Unfortunately, you know, having said that, so I'm saying, you know, you shouldn't be doing anything differently. You should just do whatever an entrepreneur or any, you know, whether you're a woman or man should do. But unfortunately, there are biases, whether conscious or unconscious. And when you go in front of an investor, a VC, and you start presenting your idea, I can tell you, I mean, I've been there, I know it. Especially at the very first startup with it, they look at you, a young woman just out of college. I mean, sometimes I felt like they would not even look straight at me, right, and try to get the answer from somewhere. Mm-hmm. So it's, but I think now it's improved somewhat because, again, because of the pressure and everything that you see nowadays in society, trying to say, okay, you know, you can treat women differently. So whether it's in a company, VC, but still you sense it. So the only thing I would say is that, you know, there's really nothing different that you should do. You should still go to the same VC. You should still go talk to the same customers, but you have to be a lot more patient because, you know, you feel many times you actually feel that they may not be taking you as seriously, especially if you don't have a past kind of history. And you should basically be, you should have a lot of perseverance. Don't quit or give up because, you know, 9 out of 10 told you not, or 10 out of 10, because there are still ways to go. You should still keep going and be optimistic. And I think, again, if you do have, if you're trying to set up a company, you should definitely try to approach the women-friendly VCs for sure, because they do have the intention and basically they're dedicated to make sure that they do invest more in women. And if you're choosing partners to work with in a company as a team, you know, it's always good to be all women, but it's you know, it's definitely an advantage of men partners too, because first of all, diversity is perfect. So you don't want one, but at the same time, it helps also with the raising money and trying to get money, etc. But you have to. There's no question. I mean, I feel like I've worked 100 times harder than my my colleagues who are not women. You just have to be ready for this, and I'm hoping that all this thing will change one day. That's what we're trying to do, right? I mean, a woman should not be feeling like I have to prove myself by working, and it's so much harder than my colleague to get to where I can be.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we are, you're offering a lot of great advice to folks during this fireside chat, but I'm sure you've had your fair share of advice that you got from people that might have not been really helpful, or if anything, maybe misleading or causing delays in the launch of your venture or whatnot. I've had a fair share of absolutely wrong advice that folks have given me over the years, and I think one of the biggest traits of a good entrepreneur is to be able to separate signal from the noise and identify what's good advice, what's bad advice. I was wondering if you have any great, what's the best or worst advice you've got from someone in your entrepreneurial career? If you have something specific that you would like to share with the group, I think that would be very helpful for them.
The very best advice is basically telling me that just be comfortable with yourself, be yourself, and don't let others define you or pressure you on making a decision that it's basically you just be yourself and believe in yourself. I think that that has been the best advice. The worst one has been again maybe you should just give up and just do the regular work, or work with or for another kind of person. So I think these have been the best and worst kind of advice. And you hear it from different kind of people at different kind of times. But I mean, I've had people telling me, why don't you just go take care of your family? It's and just do the normal kind of life that everyone has. But again, it may be good for some people, may not. I don't think it would have worked for me. It would have. It's because of the nature I have. So.
Sure, yeah. Sure. So let's pivot for one more time, and my goal here is to talk about, sort of provide a more holistic view of a life of an entrepreneur. There's so many success stories and great exits and celebrated entrepreneurs out there that we hear about all the time. But for every one of those stories, there's thousands of untold stories of pain and struggle and anxiety and failure and mistakes, etc., etc., etc. Let's explore this a little bit further together. But by focusing on some questions that I think hopefully paints a more realistic picture of the life of an entrepreneur. And we've got some Q&A questions that are also related to and are sort of in this realm. Tell us about a bad day at a startup like yours.
I mean, bad days in a startup is just like even big company days, right? If you lose a customer, if you lose the people, if you can't raise, you can't sleep because you have to think about, okay, where am I going to get the funding for the next 12 months? And this all happen, no matter how, I can assure you, every startup, even the most successful ones, have this kind of, they have days, months, that they basically go through ups and downs. And so there are days that you feel so excited because all of a sudden something that you have been working towards to as a milestone, whether it's getting a customer committed, etc. It's so exciting when it happens. But there are days that, again, and being a startup, the difference between big company and small company is that big company is so big. If you lose something in one area, the company is not going to die because there's revenue coming from other segment of the company. if you lose one person in one group, it doesn't matter because you have so many people. But and then you don't have to really lose the sleep. I mean, there are times that companies do layoffs, etc. But you know, it's not like it's rare relatively to. Startups do have this, right? But then they have a huge reward too. But at the same time, so if let's say you've been working and trying, you can't, you know, as a startup, you have limited people, right? If you're working to try to get a customer for the past 12 or I don't know, 12 months and then that very few of them you can afford to do, right? You can't go after every customer in the world. So if that's just one customer that you've been working so hard to get basically drops you or doesn't continue anymore, it's really, really painful, right? I mean, it's not the end of, it's a failure, but it's not the end of the world. You still go and try to, but it's a bad day, right? If the small team that you have, especially the early guys that you have had with you, every one of them, when they decide to move on and do something else, is so painful because, again, it's you know, it's a small company. It's become like a family, not only because of the business. You actually, it's become sort of your family. You feel like even emotionally, it's become stressful, right? So everything that in a big company is a bad thing becomes like 1,000 times more and harder. And when you're trying to basically, you know, again, every company goes through it. You go try to raise money, you have to worry about, okay, am I able to basically keep my employees because I'm responsible for all these people and their families, and how do I make sure that, so I mean, all these things are things that could be bad, but you go through it. But again, something positive happens, you get a customer, or you actually raise the money. It's just the opposite. It becomes so exciting, and so everything can be exaggerated. But you know, these challenges actually make that somewhat exciting too. So
very good. We actually have got a question in the Q&A that is kind of related to our discussion. So let me switch over to the Q&A questions before I continue with my own questions. And it's sort of a similar question to the one that I just asked you, but with a different take. The question is, what would you consider the most important mistake of your entrepreneurial career? And in other words, what presented the greatest learning opportunity for you in your journey to leading a successful startup?
I think I learned a lot from my first startup, even though it actually turned out to be a successful story. But you know, we were again young, off college, and even though we had done some experiences in startups, and you know, first of all, it was not full time, and but when it came to the business side of it, I think there were things that you know, we did either we regretted. For example, giving just one, you know, specific example was basically giving first right of refusal to a company, which basically kind of limits you on the upside. Like, you know, you basically, when you want to sell the company, it limits you on how many competitors you can basically bring in and increase the value, etc. So again, and that's expected, right? I mean, that's one of those things that when this is your first startup, and that's your learning, right? This is just the very first thing. Luckily, that didn't cause a huge failure for us. I would still consider, you know, our first startup being very successful, but it limited us, right? It could have become really a big failure as well. But you know, again, all these things are the things that in the second time when we wanted to start the company, from the beginning we knew what to look for, and you know, what to be careful about, and how to set things up so that you actually don't repeat the same mistakes you had in the first round, right?
Sure. You mentioned we talked a lot about the roller coaster of a startup. You know, there's no normal day. in the life of a startup. You're either dealing with firefighting or, you know, super excited about closing a deal or whatnot. I think it would be interesting to explore the other side of the coin, because there's always a grass is always green on the other side of the fence type of a mentality. Folks who are entrepreneurs probably from at times miss the safety and the security of a full-time job, and vice versa. Those who are doing full-time jobs always dream of being an entrepreneur. What do you think? What do you miss from your non-entrepreneurial past? You know, you spent 15 years at Broadcom and 7 years at UCLA. I think it would be interesting to share with us the other side of the coin, which is, you know, what are the things that you probably took for granted where you were at Broadcom and UCLA that you now need to spend a lot of time and energy on?
You know, I did, but at the same time, I was getting really bored too. So there are things that, again, you know, there are things that you may like, but there are a lot of it you may not like. And I can tell you specifically, for example, at Broadcom. But you know, I also want to make it clear, even at Broadcom, we were not just a regular, because we were still really going and fighting and trying to increase our portfolio and product, and so it's still within. But having said that, yeah, it was not a, you know, risky kind of start. It was not. I didn't have to. I didn't have to worry about, okay, tomorrow am I going to be able to support, let's say, pay my employees or not, and how, you know, think about their families, etc. That's the one thing that, you know, that's a luxury that gives you. And the other thing that was actually, I didn't have, I actually had my first child right after we sold our company to Broadcom. So
oh, wow.
I was working too hard and I was so focused, but it gave me the, you know, kind of the time that at least I felt, okay, now we have, I don't have to worry so much about how to support the startup, make it, you know, take it to the next level. So maybe I can afford to have some time on the family side, and
Sure.
So I had 2 children, and even though I didn't take much off, I was still working very hard, but at least I felt like I can have the time to have some time with my children, etc.
Sure.
So that's the only thing. But on the other hand, you know, especially toward the end, it was just becoming just so boring, and then you have to deal with so many, this, you know, every little small decision you want to make has to go through so many levels, and becoming very hard, especially for someone who had done something before and was
Sure.
the decision maker and do whatever they wanted to do.
So that's great, because sort of my next question is quite related to what you were talking about. You briefly alluded to the fact that, you know, this was your true calling. You know, you wanted to be an entrepreneur. You enjoyed the adrenaline rush and you know, the roller coaster lifestyle. Who do you think should consider starting a company? Or maybe a better question is, why should one start a company? So looks like it's sort of a subjective thing. Even if you find the right time, the right place, the right opportunity, I think your personal characteristics play a big role in deciding whether or not you should take the leap of faith. So if you can talk a little bit about, you know, the who and the why of starting a venture, that would also be great.
Well, I really think whoever really has passion for starting a company should definitely try it. But keep in mind that whoever does that, first of all, has to have a tolerance for risk. So they have to be risk taker. They have to be able to say, okay, yeah, I may not make it this time, I may fail, but that's not failure really. I mean, that's something that that's my learning kind of process. The first one thing, second thing, even third thing may not get anywhere, but I'm able to continue. I have the dedication, I have the motivation and the passion to basically, and they have to be very hardworking. I mean, if these characteristics are not in them, they just have the idea that, okay, I'd like to, because many people talk about it and say, I want to start my own company because I want to be my own boss, right? but then being your own boss means that you really have to have all these things. You have to be able to spend a lot of time, and you have to be able to be able to basically work with others as a team. You have to be able to sell your ideas. Again, you know, I may be the best, I may be a genius with great ideas, but if I can't sell my ideas and if I can't show how this applies to the market and generate revenue and sell it, then, you know, there's no use for it, right? Mm-hmm. So I think, yeah, as long as you have the passion for it and you set it right, and and some of these things don't have to be all in you, but you have to make sure you find a partner that complements you to get all these basically in one. So it could be 2, 3 people, but complementing each other so that you basically get these things in place.
Great. In fact, 2 of the questions on the Q&A posted by Hannah and Leila are related to our topic and our discussion. So Hannah is asking, how did you find your right team? And Leila is asking kind of a similar question, which is, you know, if you're dealing with a co-founder, how would you pick a co-founder? And she's asking about the idea of ownership, starting when you start putting a team together as well. So I know you got a little bit lucky with your co-founder, but was curious to know if you have any thoughts on, you know, good tips on picking a co-founder or putting together the right team for a venture.
Well, usually co-founders are the ones that have known and worked on. You don't just go and try to find someone on the internet and say, I'm starting a company. Usually, you know, because it's more than just, it's not just, it's also the chemistry, right? So usually what happens, co-founders are 2 or 3 people who have been working together on probably the same kind of projects in a company. Or if not, at least they've had enough interactions so that they know they can work together well, and they sort of, you know, probably have complement each other's. But but in most cases, the co-founders are people that you're working with, right? And that would mean that again, you have to be sure that you guys can work together nicely. But when it comes to teams, again, if you have a couple of people and that are co-founders, I mean, they should be able to find others that they have worked with or recruit them from. I mean, at that point, it's more of a recruitment. And in my case, again, we were lucky because when we started our first company, pretty much the whole team who was doing the research at UCLA joined, and we knew everybody. And the second time in the second company, again, because we had a team, we built the team at Broadcom. Our first people, we actually had people who were asking us, why don't you come out and want to come out with you and start the company? So again, I think a lot goes back to who have you been working with, and they also feel like you can lead. You know, you're a leader as well. But this is not one of those things that they go online and say, okay, I'm starting a company, you know, I need a co-founder kind of.
Sure. And just to echo what you were saying, Maryam, what I would like to add is, and I'm sure you agree with this, when you start a company, you started with the intention of having a successful exit or making something meaningful, which typically takes, you know, 5 to 10, 15, who knows how many years. Consider spending a vast majority of your day interacting or interfacing with your co-founder. So if you spend so much time and energy picking your spouse, I think it would be worth to spend maybe enough time, or maybe at least comparable amount of time picking your co-founder, because it's very likely that you're going to spend more time with your co-founder than your spouse, at least the first few years of starting your business. I think you agree with me, right?
100%, yeah. Exactly.
Very good.
No, it's
very good. Sorry, go ahead. Did you want to say something?
No, I said it's 100% correct. I mean, you spend so much time with co-founders and even your team in a small company, you know, from day to night and sometimes even midnight. So
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Mariam, I think many of our attendees are tuned in, presumably because they're considering launching a startup, and that puts them right where you were before launching your very first venture. What would you have liked to know then that you think our attendees should know now if they are considering starting a new business, especially if they are, female minority entrepreneurs?
What would I really would have liked to have confidence earlier on than building it. You just have to believe in yourself and not be so conscious of what other people may or may not think. I think I actually went through a painful process to get there. And partially because part of it was because also, for me coming here, completely new culture, everything was new, and so everything added up. Not being able to speak the languages initially, and and then going to a university, and where I think I was the only woman at in that research lab, pretty much.
Wow.
Right, being completely minority. And I mean, these things, whether you like it or not, it impacts your confidence and impact. Okay, I will always go sit in the back of the car, one of those, students. I would not raise my hand. So, but I built the confidence over time, and I think if I had more belief and confidence in myself earlier on, that would have been less painful process for me. But that's, I think, one of the things that especially women and female entrepreneurs should basically feel like from the beginning.
Sure. Ozzy just posted an interesting question on the Q&A forum. She's saying, how do you leave your comfort zone when you worked so hard for your corporate job? Also, having set benefits, what is the thought process of leaving that behind and stepping into the unknown?
Well, to be honest with you, for the second time, it was not too hard because, we already had built something before, and at least financially and everything, it wasn't like a huge risk if I come out, but it's always scary if you're in a big company, you're making enough your money, but and then if you come out, it could be financially very risky, etc. It's not that easy. I agree with you, but remember, there is a risk and reward, right? I mean, there is no reward unless you take risk, and the best is if you actually do it early on when you have time, and try it. I mean, you never lose anything by trying at least a few years and see. I mean, if you really are interested in doing, if you've been working in a corporate for, let's say, even 7, 8, it's never late until you become like 60 or whatever. But in 20 something, 30 something, it's I don't think you can always give it a try. You should give it a try if you really have the passion to do it, because again, risk and reward, you can always be very conservative and cautious. And that's basically, it's not going to get you anywhere beyond what you have right now. It's which, for some people it's fine, no problem, it's actually a good time. But for people who have the passion to take the risk and start something, they should definitely do it. I recommend it.
Very cool. So I don't know how we're doing with time. Folks from Women of MENA in Engineering, raise your hand or stop me if I'm going too long, but I basically have maybe one more question for Maryam, and there's one more Q&A question. So I'm going to go through those unless you guys ask me to stop. So Leila is asking, how did you come up with the company name Movandi?
I didn't come up with that. It's actually one of our CFO who joined us from the beginning. But okay, what happened was that we came out of Broadcom, but at the same time, we did not want to, we wanted to be in a stealth mode. So we definitely want to have a name that would indicate what we're doing if somebody knew that we started the company, at least for a year or so. So we're looking at names that are just random, that sound good. And he came up with, we all came up with different names, and he came up with Movandi. I don't know why and how. Maybe, I think there's a wine that's very close to that. But that's how I came up with it. And then I actually initially I didn't think it was such a cool name, but now I love it. So we've been using that name, and we're going with it.
It's a great name. They say two of the things you should keep in mind when picking a name is that if you say the name over a noisy phone call, hopefully people would have a high recall remembering the name 10 minutes later. So I'm sure Movandi is a very recognizable name. I'm glad you guys stuck with it.
Yeah, it's different. Yeah, thank you.
Sure. So, we briefly talked about this, but I think it would be helpful to maybe look at this question from a different angle. Launching a startup, even a super successful one, as we talked about, is usually both a financial and an emotional roller coaster. What do you think is the hardest part of being an entrepreneur? Do you think it's the financial aspect, the mental anxiety, the responsibilities that make life of an entrepreneur, let's say, exciting, but also challenging at times?
I would say the mental anxiety. I mean, just feeling that, you're basically, it's not just you. You have brought a team, and you're responsible for it. And I think that's basically, I wouldn't say that part is that exciting, by the way. I mean, everything else about it is exciting. But yeah, that would, to me, again, and because I'm actually leading the team, it's like my number one always thing. No matter whether we have enough money, I just have to keep thinking about it. Okay, what happens? How do we make sure that these people are actually being rewarded at the end, and they, we don't fail. Just not because I'm afraid of failure, because I feel like responsible for everyone in the company as well.
Very good. Let's take our last Q&A question from an anonymous attendee. The question is, as a successful entrepreneur, what are the ways you're paying it forward? And before you answer, I mean, I just wanted to say, she's been absolutely gracious with her time, given her extremely busy schedule, spending more than an hour and a half with us. So that's greatly appreciated. But if you have anything else to add on that question.
Again, I wish I could do more, but it's really, really, I mean, I have a family, so I have 2 children. One just went to college, the other one is still in middle school, and at the same time, I have this company. So I wish I could do more, but I'm trying my best. I mean, as I mentioned, these kind of events I try to attend as much as I can. Again, I can't tell you that I will do everything, and I've been, going to every one of them. But we also have formed. I am spending time on this committee from global GSA, basically global semiconductor, and we are putting, me and my sister are leading subcommittees in there where we're trying to increase the number of women in engineering. So we're working with them very closely. I have been basically helping. I am on the board of, again, alumni UCLA, trying to help with bringing more female students to UCLA. I have been mentoring some. At least when I was at Broadcom and had more time, I actually mentored individuals. But I'm trying my best. So hopefully at one point I can do more. But yeah, I would love to.
You're doing great. I appreciate that. All right, Maryam, this was great. I really enjoyed speaking with you, and hopefully folks who are listening in found this conversation helpful. Let me hand it back over to folks from Women of MENA to conclude the session.
All right, thank you so much, Ali John and Maryam John. It was very interesting conversation, pretty much cover all the questions. I already wrote a couple of questions, but you already cover everything. Very interesting. Thank you so much for all the attendee for the time. Again, we have a membership program going on. If you haven't already, check out our website. And if you have any question, you can always send us an email. And we are always there to answer any question about our organization. And thank you so much again. And have a good evening. Bye.
Take care.
Thank
Bye, guys.
you. Bye.